Get Smart went on to become one of the most loved TV series of all time.
Max, we made it. Now all we have to do is unchain the Prime Minister and get him out of here.
Right. Picture this. You're watching your favorite TV show, laughing at all the silly jokes and funny moments. But what if I told you that there's a whole episode out there that you've never seen? An episode so funny, so crazy, that the TV bosses decided nobody should ever watch it? Well, that's exactly what happened with one of the most beloved comedy shows of the 1960s, Get Smart. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of television's most mysterious secrets. We're talking about the lost episode of Get Smart that almost nobody got to see, and the other hilarious scenes that were cut from the show. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be as frustrated as I am that we never got to see these amazing moments. So grab your shoe phone and get ready, because we're about to uncover the secret files of Maxwell Smart that the network didn't want you to see. Get Smart was one of those shows that made everyone laugh. It starred Don Adams as Maxwell Smart, also known as Agent 86, the world's most lovably clueless secret agent. He worked for a spy organization called Control, fighting against the bad guys from KOS. The show was created by comedy legends Mel Brooks and Buck Henry, and it was pure gold from the very first episode. The show was famous for its silly gadgets, especially Max's shoe phone, and his funny catchphrases like, "Would you believe?" and "Missed it by that much." Every week, Max would stumble his way through dangerous missions, usually saved by a smart and beautiful partner, Agent 99, played by Barbara Feldon. But here's where things get interesting. Even though Get Smart was already pretty silly and ridiculous, there were apparently some things that were just too much for television in 1965. And one of these things involved something so innocent, so harmless, that when you hear about it, you'll probably shake your head in disbelief. Let me tell you about the bunny slippers incident. Yes, you heard that right, bunny slippers. During the second season of Get Smart, there was this one scene that got filmed but never made it to TV. Picture this. Maxwell Smart walks into Control headquarters, looking as serious as ever, ready to save the world from another evil plot. But instead of his usual black spy shoes, he's wearing a pair of fluffy, ridiculous bunny slippers. The scene was supposed to be classic Maxwell Smart humor. Here's this guy who takes himself so seriously, walking around in the silliest footwear you can imagine. Everyone around him is trying not to laugh, and Max has no idea why they're all staring at his feet. The joke was never explained, never mentioned again. It was just pure visual comedy. The scene was actually filmed and included in the original version of the episode. The actors did their lines, the cameras rolled, and everything was perfect. But then, just before the episode was supposed to air on television, someone at the network made a decision that still makes fans angry today. They cut the scene. That's right. On a show that featured exploding telephones, a cone of silence that never worked properly, and a villain called the Craw, someone decided that bunny slippers were too silly. This was the same show where secret agents hid inside vending machines and Max regularly talked into his shoe. But apparently, fluffy slippers cross some invisible line that nobody can really explain. Think about how crazy this is for a minute. Get Smart was built on being absurd and unexpected. The whole point of the show was to make fun of serious spy movies by making everything ridiculously funny. Yet somehow, bunny slippers were deemed too ridiculous for a show about ridiculous spies. What makes this even more frustrating is that fans never got any explanation. The network didn't release a statement. There was no behind-the-scenes commentary explaining the decision. The scene just disappeared, like it never existed in the first place. But hardcore fans noticed. Oh, boy, did they notice. Some people remembered seeing the bunny slippers in promotional photos for the episode. A few fans even swore they saw the scene during an early broadcast or in rehearsal footage. Over the years, it became like a TV urban legend, the bunny slippers that were too hot for television. This sparked debates among fans that continue to this day. Some people argued that the scene would have broken the tone of the show, that Maxwell Smart was silly, but not stupid. Others thought the bunny slippers perfectly captured everything that made the character and the show so special. Looking back, it's hard to understand why this harmless joke was considered too much. This was the 1960s, when TV executives were still figuring out what was acceptable for family television. Comedy shows had to walk a fine line between being funny and being respectable. Unfortunately, the bunny slippers fell on the wrong side of that line. But the story doesn't end there. The bunny slippers weren't the only casualty of network censorship. There were several other scenes and moments that got cut from Get Smart over the years, and each one is just as frustrating as the last. Let me tell you about the coffee incident. There was another scene that got filmed where Maxwell Smart accidentally spills hot coffee all over the Chief. Now, if you know the show, you know that the Chief, played by Edward Platt, was always a calm, serious leader trying to keep everyone in line, while Max created chaos around him. In this cut scene, the Chief gets splashed with hot coffee and starts silently screaming in pain, but he's trying to keep his composure because there's an important foreign visitor in the office. The audience that watched the filming reportedly laughed so hard that it messed up the next few lines of dialogue. So why did this scene get cut? The network executives thought it made the Chief look too weak and less authoritative. They were worried it would hurt the image of Control's leadership. Never mind the fact that in other episodes, the Chief regularly got locked in closets, blown up by malfunctioning gadgets, and once even disguised himself as a cocktail waitress. But apparently, spilling coffee was where they drew the line. Then there's the rubber chicken story, which might be the most ridiculous cut of all. There was a scripted scene where Max was supposed to use a rubber chicken as a secret weapon during a mission. The chicken was designed to squawk loudly and explode into confetti when thrown, creating a distraction so Agent 99 could sneak into a KOS office. The scene worked perfectly during rehearsals. Don Adams, who played Maxwell Smart, reportedly loved the gag and thought it was hilarious. But when the studio executives saw it, they decided it was too slapstick and would make the show seem childish. Too slapstick? On Get Smart? That's like saying water is too wet or fire is too hot. The entire show was built on slapstick comedy. But somehow, a rubber chicken crossed a line from acceptable slapstick to unacceptable silliness. The scene was scrapped and replaced with a more serious gadget that nobody even remembers today. But perhaps the most interesting cut was a full scene between Max and Agent 99. In this lost moment, the two agents accidentally get stuck inside a malfunctioning cone of silence and start sharing personal confessions with each other. It was supposed to be a rare moment of emotional honesty between the characters, showing their deeper feelings and giving them more dimension as people, not just comedy characters. This scene could have been really special. Fans always wanted to see more personal moments between Max and 99. Their chemistry was one of the best parts of the show, and their relationship was something viewers really cared about. The Cone of Silence confessional could have become a classic moment that fans talked about for decades. But it was cut because producers thought it made the episode feel too romantic for a spy comedy. They were worried that emotional moments would change the tone of the show too much. The ironic thing is that fans always wanted exactly these kinds of moments between the characters they loved. All of these cuts, the bunny slippers, the coffee spill, the rubber chicken, and the personal confessions, might seem small and unimportant when you think about the history of television. But for a show like Get Smart, where the balance between absurdity and cleverness was everything, these lost moments actually mattered a lot. They show us how even the silliest, most lighthearted comedy was still being controlled and censored by nervous executives who were worried about crossing invisible lines. It's a reminder that creative freedom wasn't always as free as we might think, even for shows that seem to get away with everything. These cuts also represent missed opportunities to make the show even better. Each of these scenes could have become iconic moments that fans quoted and remembered for years. Instead, they became footnotes in television history, stories that only the most dedicated fans know about. The bunny slipper incident, in particular, has become a symbol of how ridiculous TV censorship could be in the 1960s. It represents the frustrating gap between what creators wanted to do and what networks will allow them to do. Here was a completely harmless joke that would have made millions of people laugh, but it never got the chance because someone, somewhere, decided it was inappropriate for reasons that nobody can really explain today. What makes this even more interesting is thinking about how Get Smart influenced television comedy that came after it. The show helped create the template for mixing action and comedy, for making fun of serious genres while still telling entertaining stories. Shows like The A-Team, MacGyver, and even modern comedies like Brooklyn Nine-Nine owe something to what Get Smart pioneered. But imagine if those cut scenes had been included. Would they have pushed the boundaries even further? Would they have inspired other shows to be even sillier, even more creative? We'll never know, because those moments were lost to overcautious network executives who were more worried about playing it safe than pushing comedy forward. The story of Get Smart's cutscenes also tells us something important about how television worked in the 1960s. This was an era when there were only 3 major networks, and they had enormous power over what Americans could watch. If NBC or CBS decided something was too controversial, too silly, or too different, that was the end of the discussion. There was no internet, no streaming services, no way for creators to get their work directly to audiences. Today, it's hard to imagine a scene getting cut just for being too funny or too silly. We live in an age where comedy shows regularly push boundaries that would have terrified 1960s executives. But back then, even the most innocent humor had to pass through multiple layers of approval from people who often didn't understand what made comedy work. Don Adams, the actor who played Maxwell Smart, was reportedly frustrated by some of these cuts. He understood his character better than anyone, and he knew that the bunny slippers and rubber chicken scenes perfectly captured Maxwell Smart's blend of seriousness and absurdity. But actors in the 1960s had much less power than they do today, and his opinions didn't carry much weight with network executives. Barbara Feldon, who played Agent 99, has spoken in interviews about how the show sometimes struggled with network interference. She's mentioned that there were several scenes and storylines that could have given her character more depth and development, but they were often simplified or cut to keep the focus on broad comedy rather than character development. The creators of the show, Mel Brooks and Buck Henry, were both experienced comedy writers who understood how to balance silly humor with smart writing. They knew that the cut scenes would have made the show even better, but they also understood the reality of working in television. Sometimes you had to pick your battles, and unfortunately, bunny slippers weren't considered worth fighting for. It's also worth thinking about what these cuts meant for the actors and crew who worked on the show. Imagine being part of a scene that you know is hilarious, that makes everyone on set laugh, that you're proud to be part of, and then finding out it will never be seen by anyone. That must have been incredibly frustrating for everyone involved in creating those moments. The technical crew, the costume designers who created those bunny slippers, the props department that rigged the rubber chicken. All of their creative work disappeared because of executive decisions made in boardrooms far away from the actual filming. But here's what's really amazing about this whole story. Decades later, people are still talking about these cut scenes. The bunny slippers have become more famous for being cut than they probably would have been if they had actually aired. Sometimes the story of what didn't happen becomes more interesting than what did happen. This speaks to the lasting power of Get Smart and the connection fans feel to the show. People care so much about these characters and this world that they're genuinely upset about missing out on a few minutes of extra comedy. That's a testament to how well the show was made and how much it meant to people who watched it. The mystery of these cut scenes has also kept Get Smart alive in ways that the creators probably never expected. Fan communities have spent years discussing what might have been, sharing stories and rumors about lost footage, and keeping interest in the show alive long after it went off the air. In some ways, the bunny slippers have become the holy grail of Get Smart fandom. It's the one thing that dedicated fans most want to see, the missing piece that would complete their understanding of the show. It's like a lost treasure that might be sitting in a vault somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered. There have been rumors over the years that footage of these cutscenes still exists somewhere. Some fans believe that the original film reels are stored in a warehouse or archive, just waiting for someone to find them and share them with the world. Others think the footage was destroyed long ago, making these scenes truly lost to history. The 2008 Get Smart movie starring Steve Carell was a chance to maybe reference these lost moments, but the filmmakers chose to create an entirely new story instead of paying homage to the classic series' missing pieces. While the movie was entertaining in its own right, it didn't satisfy fans who were still curious about what those original cutscenes looked like. Looking back at the television landscape of the 1960s, it's clear that Get Smart was ahead of its time in many ways. The show was willing to be silly and absurd at a time when most comedies were much more conservative and traditional. Even with the cuts and censorship, it managed to push boundaries and influence the future of television comedy. But it's also clear that the show could have been even more revolutionary if it had been allowed to include all of its most creative and daring moments. Those cut scenes represent the road not taken, the version of Get Smart that might have been even more influential and beloved than the one we actually got to see. The story of these lost scenes also reminds us that every piece of entertainment we enjoy is the result of hundreds of decisions made by many different people. Writers, actors, directors, producers, and executives all have input into what we finally see on screen. Sometimes those decisions make things better, and sometimes they make us wonder what might have been. In the case of Get Smart's cutscenes, it seems pretty clear that the decisions were made out of an abundance of caution rather than creative wisdom. The bunny slippers, the coffee spill, the rubber chicken, and the romantic moment between Max and 99 all sound like they would have made the show more fun, more human, and more memorable. But perhaps that's part of what makes these lost moments so fascinating. They represent pure creative potential, unburdened by the compromises and second-guessing that often affect finished products. In our imagination, these scenes are perfect because we never got to see them fail or disappoint us. The legacy of Get Smart's cutscenes extends beyond just this one show. They become a symbol of the creative battles that happen behind the scenes of all entertainment. Every TV show, movie, and comedy special has moments that don't make it to the final version, decisions that leave creators and fans wondering what might have been. In recent years, with the rise of director's cuts, deleted scenes on DVDs, and behind-the-scenes content, audiences have become more aware of these creative processes. We're used to seeing alternate versions and extended cuts of our favorite movies and shows. But Get Smart's lost scenes remain truly lost, making them even more intriguing. The fact that these scenes were cut for being too silly or too much also tells us something about how comedy has evolved over the decades. What seemed too outrageous for 1960s television would probably seem pretty tame by today's standards. Comedy has become much more accepting of absurdity and willing to push boundaries in ways that would have shocked earlier generations. This makes the Get Smart cuts even more frustrating in retrospect. These scenes weren't cut for being offensive or inappropriate. They were cut for being too funny, too creative, too willing to embrace the absurd potential of comedy. They were casualties of a more conservative time that was less willing to take creative risks. But maybe there's also something we can learn from this story about the importance of creative courage. The scenes that got cut were the ones that pushed boundaries, that tried something different, that weren't afraid to be ridiculous. Even though they never made it to air, they represent the kind of creative thinking that makes entertainment memorable and meaningful. Today, as we look back on Get Smart and its missing scenes, we can appreciate both what the show accomplished and what it might have accomplished. We can enjoy the comedy that we have while also imagining the comedy that might have been. And we can use this story as a reminder that sometimes the most creative and daring ideas are the ones that face the most resistance. The bunny slippers, the rubber chicken, the coffee spill, and romantic confession. These aren't just missing scenes from an old TV show. They're symbols of creative ambition, of the willingness to try something new and different even when it might not work. They represent the kind of creative risk-taking that makes art interesting and meaningful. So the next time you're watching Get Smart and laughing at Maxwell Smart's latest mishap, remember that there are even more laughs that never made it to your screen. Remember the scenes that were too funny for television, the moments that were lost to overcautious executives and conservative times. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in a forgotten archive or storage room, those scenes are still waiting to be discovered. Maybe someday we'll finally get to see Maxwell Smart in his bunny slippers, watch him deploy a rubber chicken as a secret weapon, and witness that intimate moment between him and Agent 99 in the malfunctioning cone of silence. Until then, these lost scenes remain part of Get Smart's secret files, classified moments that remind us that even in comedy, some of the best material never sees the light of day. They're a testament to the creative spirit of the show and a reminder that sometimes what we don't get to see is just as important as what we do. The story of Get Smart's cutscenes teaches us about the power of imagination, the importance of creative freedom, and the lasting impact of decisions made in television boardrooms decades ago. It's a reminder that every piece of entertainment we enjoy is shaped by countless choices, some of which we'll never know about. But most importantly, it's a celebration of the creative minds who were willing to imagine Maxwell Smart in bunny slippers, who thought a rubber chicken could be a secret weapon, and who believed that even the silliest spy comedy could have moments of real human connection. Even though we never got to see these scenes, the fact that someone thought to create them makes the world to get smart even richer and more wonderful. So there you have it. The secret story of Get Smart's lost episodes and cutscenes. From bunny slippers to rubber chickens, from coffee spills to romantic confessions, these missing moments remind us that even our favorite shows have hidden depths and lost treasures waiting to be discovered. What do you think about these cutscenes? Do you wish they had been included in the original episodes? Can you imagine any other scenes that might have been too silly even for Get Smart? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed learning about these television mysteries, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories about the hidden history of your favorite shows. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching, and remember, when it comes to lost television history, would you believe there's always more to discover?